Oh my gosh, guys, Phos is dead. I never thought this would happen. I think that Phos is dead, or this new really tiny pebble piece right here is going to be them raising Phos as a new child. And it's smaller than I thought because Phos broke at the beginning. Oh my gosh! I'll translate this soon. Oh my gosh! What did I just read? If you have any doubts when reading Ichikawa's writing, if it can get worse, the answer is always yes. While there are some positives in the chapter 107 that just came out, I was not ready to watch Phos die in that way. But let's talk about it. Now, I did translate it as soon as I figured out it came out, except it took me a while because I was hanging out with friends, with one of them visiting out of state, so it took me longer than usual. But I was finally able to translate the chapter as best as I could. I'm not a professional translator. And it's a ride. Definitely a ride. I feel so bad for Phos, as you always do, you know. The first page absolutely killed me. Like, absolutely killed me. Wait, Phos broke? Oh my gosh, wait, what is happening? No! Wait, what's happening? What's happening? Oh no! Because I was not prepared for Phos to break again, but it makes complete sense, because the whole running gag is that Phos is extremely fragile. In the first chapter, Phos breaks that way, it is extremely fragile, and then they explain it. And in this time, Phos breaks this way. And this also reminded me when Phos tried to save Cinnabar and their arms broke. It's like kind of comedic, but also really heart-wrenching, you know, because it's the whole reason for why they did that. To me, this is kind of a bringer back to why Phos gained all those materials that I just rejected in the first place, because of their brittleness. And the chapter even reminds us again on the side of how brittle Phos is, and this is the reason why they gained that before. And it keeps questioning of how small can Phos get, but I hope that Phos doesn't get any smaller next chapter, but I think this will be the smallest Phos gets. We'll see. We still have one chapter yet. It can always get worse. Okay, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the Japanese the characters use, because of course I translated it and I'm really geeky about that stuff. I love how Brongo, I'm just going to call him Brongo, speaks Japanese, just in general, because it's super goofy and it's so lovely. Hello, Future Riza here, just letting you know because now another translation has come out. I was only working with my translation at the time of this video, but the word that Brongo's saying I got wrong in my translation, I translated as huh because I wasn't quite sure what he was saying and I was looking for possible things that it could be and I thought it could be huh, but it's actually Atsui. He is saying the word hot and that's what Atsui means. And he's breaking in the middle of saying it, because I got confused because he's using katakana too, because Brongo uses katakana all the time, and that confuses me. But he's saying atsui, but because he's in pain, he's cutting it in the middle, so he's saying achi, achi, instead of atsui, which I didn't catch when I was translating it. So just letting you know, but I still think that what I'm saying still applies to that. In fact, the first couple huhs in, because he just says huh, 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 like the first part of the chapter, because he's so confused, because he doesn't know how brittle Phos is, I just realized. He should have some knowledge of this, but I think he didn't realize how brittle Phos is until he actually grabbed onto Phos, and Phos just immediately broke, and that's why he's saying that. But it's really funny, because he says, like, achi, in Japanese, and in the speech bubbles he's switching between hiragana and katakana, and it's a different one every time, and I think it's supposed to really emphasize how much he's so confused at the fact that Phos is so brittle. And of course then he's like, oh no, did I like kill Phos? And it's sad when you first read it like me, but now I find it a little funny because it's Brongo. Now, Pebble asks if it's the important part of Phos, and I find that interesting because this is obviously the core piece, and of course we thought that bigger piece was the core piece, but I guess it's the smaller one, and I guess they're wondering how brittle or Phos, or how much Phos could take, basically. And now, another thing about the Japanese is when Phos is disappearing, their Japanese slowly changes back into how they used to talk. And that's so cool, because I was emphasizing in the last couple of chapters that I've been I've only been here for when 106 releases, but I've been emphasizing when I translated 106 how weird, how different Phos's vocal pattern has changed, and I'm probably going to make a whole separate video on that, because I could go on and I need to reread the Japanese to fully get the context. But Phos, again, used to speak very politely. As Phos goes on and disappearing, their vocal pattern changes to be less polite, less informal, and they use boku for the first time in like 10 chapters. Phos uses boku again. I literally was like, oh man, Phos Foss is finally being himself. Like, that's literally what I thought when reading it in Japanese, as I was like, oh my gosh, it's baby Foss again. Because that's what it was going for. And in fact, it emphasizes Foss's language getting more and more like their infant self. I say infant in quotes because, their younger self. By the fact that they say the same word twice. So they say light, karui. The first time they say karui, it's in kanji. And their kanji usage also gets more simplistic as it goes on. And the last time they say karui, which is their final word, which is light, like seeing the light, is I assume what it's going for. It's in hiragana, just pure hiragana, and it makes that page so much more angelic, I feel like, or heavenly, or like Foss is like, passing on, and it's their child self. Because in the scene where Congo is talking to Foss for, when they're a child, the only time we see Foss as a child, in quotes, when Congo is teaching them, Foss speaks in all hiragana. I know way too much about this series. Foss speaks in hiragana, like, completely, even though there is kanji that Foss could use for the words that they speak. And I love how Ichikawa pays so much detail to this. But Foss, as they're disappearing, reverts back to that, to their very first self. And I think that really goes with the reborn theory that I kind of did in my predictions video. It was a jumble mess of that. But yeah, that's insane. I love that. Literally so great. When I was translating that, I was like, that's very lovely. Karui. Light. Foss used the light. Oh my gosh! No! What is this, guys? Oh my gosh! No way! Oh my gosh, Foss is dead! I can't believe I would ever say that or see this. Sorry, I just need to correct myself for a bit. I just realized, I knew this before, but it made more sense because light and light are the same word in English, but I'm talking about light and luminosity and light in weight, and I just need to correct myself a bit, because I when I explain that, I explained it as if Foss seeing the light dying and stuff like that, but Foss is actually saying light is in getting lighter, as in a weight is being lifted off from them, and considering they've had the gold since they got the golden arms, basically, and that's the second thing they changed themselves, it's a physical representation of them letting go of all of the materials they gained that was from their dissatisfaction with themselves and all the terribleness that came with their life. I mean, each piece was associated with trauma and things that made hardships in their life. It's literally the weight and burden of their sins, in quote, if you see it that way, or human desires, or their problems. You can see it as just a weight, and however you see that, and whatever you believe. And it's their weight leaving them. It's them finding peace. That's why they say karui, which is getting lighter. I'm feeling like I'm getting lighter. That's what Foss says, is their last words. And it's the weight of all of their humanness leaving them, and they finally get to go into the afterlife, whatever that is. It's so beautiful. I love this chapter so much. So good. I hate you, Ichikawa, but I love you, Ichikawa, at the same time. Anyway. My last main, translation note with, the Japanese is that Foss was always referred to as an older sibling, or older brother, in the previous chapters when talking to the Pebbles, because, of course, Foss is ancient. But slowly, as this chapter goes on, the Pebbles don't refer to Foss as older brother anymore. Instead, they refer to Foss as younger brother, because Foss is finally a pebble like them, a rock, and Foss is tinier than them, and they talk about how Foss is cute and kind, like Congo did. I made that connection in my predictions video. Kikoeta, I heard it. Yasashi, kawaii, aw, kind, cute. Wait, these are the words that Foss used at the very beginning to describe themselves. Ito chisai, it's very small, is what that says. And this circles back to the very first chapter where Foss is complimenting themselves with the different compliments. That's what I was thinking when they were saying that, and when Foss is looking in the mirror. When I was translating, I also kind of died when Brongo asked the Pebbles to pray for Foss in the human, because that could be how Foss was able... No, that has to be the way Foss was able to disappear and have peace in return with the other people who got prayed for, is that the Pebbles prayed for Foss. They prayed for Foss to move on, just like Foss wanted to do. Foss finally had people who could pray with them. And, oh, that's so sweet. Literally, it's so sweet. And the fact that they call Foss their, little, brother, basically, and, Brongo even asked Foss to treasure him, it's so in contrast to how Congo brought up Phos and how the other gems viewed Phos. It's so lovely and nice to see Phos actually have a family, but it's also heartening to see the Phos that we follow through the story basically die and be prayed for, but it's also a sense of peace that they gain, which we kind of got both endings that we thought were going to happen. We were like, oh, doesn't Phos want to die? Isn't that the end goal here? We kind of got both, because Phos, the human Phos, died, definitely, and was prayed for by the pebbles, I think, and that's how their spirit was able to pass on, because that's why he says for him, sorry, I'm using gendered pronouns, it's just because it's easier right now, but for Phos, and the human, who is also Phos, I translated it as humans, because I was wondering if they meant, like, all of humanity, but I think that it could just be human, so for Phos the human, and for Phos in general, and then Phos gets to pass on, but Phos also leaves behind their inorganic material that has no human inclusions, that gets to be with the pebbles, and so we get both endings, basically. We get Phos dying, and we get Phos getting to live forever, basically, in a more peaceful and happy society. So that's great. We kind of got both predictions, because people were saying, like, oh, I think Phos is going to pass on. We thought that Phos was going to pray for themselves, but no, they made people that will pray for them in the afterlife. But Phos also gets to carry on as a rock with the pebbles, which is basically both of what we thought was going to happen. We just separated the human inclusions part of Phos, basically Phos's inclusions, from the inorganic self that is just Phos as a rock. But Phos hasn't spoken yet. Maybe 108 will end with Phos speaking and confirming that is a part of Phos, or that it's probably not the same Phos, but or the same Phos that we know throughout the story. It's so complicated, but it's Phos speaking, confirming that Phos is still sentient, because Phos hasn't talked, and that kind of scares me. Like, what if Phos doesn't talk? It scares me, but, like, the Phos's inorganic self of the pebbles. I hope that 108 shows Phos talking, or maybe it'll be more vague. I have no idea what's going to happen in 108. But Phos basically got to die and be reborn, because they call Phos their younger brother, and the ending, like, I died ever translating this chapter a lot. Oh man, I'm dying. The last page says, everyone has been there from the beginning. The youngest, emphasizing the youngest. Phos is now younger in their eyes, because they know Phos is, like, going to be different from the Phos they knew before, and they see Phos as a younger sibling. It's so cute. Phosphophyllite is not alone, and it's going to contrast the beginning of the series with Phos saying that they were always alone when they prayed. Now Phos won't be alone. It's going to be so cute, and instead of Congo, it's Brongo, but and it's great. And of course, the ending, I saw some people confused of the ship and stuff. I have some questions about that ship. Like, they said that, I wonder if the ship needed Phosphophyllite in some way. I don't know, I'd have to click on that a little bit more. But Brongo said before that there must have been a reason that Acmea left a little bit of Phos. Of course, we could make inferences about whatever that reason was, but they gathered Phos's pieces towards the middle, and it looks like Phos was part of the core, and it was glowing, and I don't know, and it seems like maybe that Phos could have something to do with the ship, and why that. It's very interesting what Brongo is talking about the ship, because I think that some people were saying, because there is gems in the flowers, in the, like, widespread panel of all showing the like, lushness of this planet that they found that they can start new life in, basically, and there are gems inside the flowers. I saw some people thinking that maybe the Lunarians had a role in putting the gems on the planet, and if they planned this ship that they gave into Phos, like, maybe that's why, and so maybe these are all inclusionless gem pieces of the characters we knew. I don't know. I don't have much thoughts on the gems in the flowers yet, but that is a thing that is there that I didn't notice when I first read the chapter, but some people pointed out later, is that there are rocks in the flowers, and flowers are also a huge thing, a huge Lunarian thing as well. Like with Cinnabar, and we see a whole bunch of flowers. In Left Freedom Hell, it bigs out with a giant spread of flowers and plants, and so maybe the Lunarians did have a part of this, or had a part in setting up this planet for Phos. That seems weird, but I mean, it's in their possibilities with what the show does. I don't have much to speak on with that, but I thought that was interesting. This is very much of a rambling video. I'm just trying to get my thoughts out of this insane chapter. Brongo basically is going to be the better Congo here, because even though Brongo is a little bit more sporadic, he won't have the gems, or, the pebbles, hiding their feelings, which, in the video I did with Joy, she talked about how the no feeling in the Congo society led to a lot of the problems, is because they felt like they always had to bring up a certain image. Brongo is very emotional, is very contrast to Congo, and that is going to improve, or I think the story is saying that will improve how the pebbles operate and how they don't see people as utility, but just as like people. I explained that in my 106 video. But yeah, welcome to Ichikawa circular storytelling, because Foss, in fact, the last eye that we see Foss close it mimics the beginning exactly. I realized this before, but the very first couple of panels we see in the entire series, we know we had that mimicked before in the other chapters, and we could not see anything. Foss is the only character we see Foss's eyes first. And that's because the story follows Foss, and it follows Foss's eyes. Foss no longer has eyes, and now we're kind of following Brongo instead of Foss. Because we see Foss disappear as they get prayed away, right? And a lot of people said that this was kind of like what happened to Shiro in volume 4, I believe it was volume 4, with Shiro kind of like going into mist or like that happening or fighting peace, and that's kind of what it mimicked. And the thing is that, again, the first eyes we see are Foss's. We see Foss transform back to their little self, and then it's the only eye that we see when Foss wakes up, because we only see one eye of Foss's when they wake up. And then Foss closes that eye, and the last panel is, of course, them going away, but we see that eye closed. And we start with seeing that eye closed, and then it opens, and then the story starts, because the story is from Foss's eyes, from Foss's point of view. Foss finally gets to close their eye, and then it's Brongo. It's literally Brongo and I. Brongo is now, I think, the protagonist of the story, because it literally goes back to Brongo, and we get quite a few panels of just Brongo's eye itself. And Brongo is basically the protagonist now, which is kind of weird, because Foss hasn't spoken. It concerns me. But, yeah, and of course they're calling Foss their smaller brother. It's still about Foss, but now it's about Brongo. It's about the community. It's about the pebbles in general and what they're going to do. And of course they find a new planet, and Brongo explains like how they got to that planet. And they said there's only enough fuel to get there, so maybe the Lunarians did have a part of it. I might subscribe to that theory. We'll see. We never know what Ichikawa's cooking. Again, I want that third party in my predictions video that is completely outdated now. I wanted the third party that I mentioned in that video. I actually did go more into depth about the third party in that video. I want that to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen. Because one chapter to introduce new characters, I just don't think Ichikawa would do that. I just don't think it's smart to introduce new characters in the last chapter. So probably not, but that still would have been cool. They probably still exist somewhere. But it's just so emotional. Like, literally, this chapter is so emotional. Because when I realized that they were calling Foss younger, their younger sibling, and they were being more loving, they didn't even care that Foss spoke back to them. They were just like, I'm glad that Foss exists. It literally is such a great message, too. I love Houseki no Kuni so much, especially for the message of the story, because it is very depressing. Houseki no Kuni is very depressing. Of course, we all know that. We all went through this hell, and of course the series is really sad. But it really emphasizes the difference between human sadness and human happiness and what gets in the way of our happiness. And it also emphasizes that there are things that can improve it. And I think that's what's happening now. Because we get to see the suffering that Foss went through, but we see that through this community with the pebbles and their acceptance of Foss just as they are, and the journey that they're going through. And maybe 108 will hammer those themes more. But I think Ichikawa will end it on a positive note of needing a family, basically. Because that's basically what the Pebbles and Brongo and all of them are, and that's why they call themselves siblings and all that. Is that you need a family to accept you, not for your utility, if I can say words, but for just you being there. To see your presence as a gift is, I think, what Houseki no Kuni is trying to illustrate, that you need to have people around you to do that. This is literally just me after thinking about it for a day, so my brain is still brewing and discombobulated and stuff like that from this lovely chapter. This is why I love stories like this, though. This is why Houseki no Kuni grabbed me so much as a story, is because I don't like stories that shy away from how hard life can be, because there are really tough things that you can go through in life. How, really tough things that make you sometimes want to end your existence, as Phos has said. And Phos has definitely gone through very hard things. But there's another path. There's always another path. And I think that Houseki no Kuni is a perfect illustration of that other path, but it also shows how we feed into our own bad situations. And I just love that it doesn't steer away from showing how bad life can be and how much we can make it worse with how Phos did it. But it also shows an incredible amount of kindness that Phos has, of course, with praying. And it just shows a really big complexity of how, we can do terrible things, we can have bad days. And sometimes it can be for selfless reason. It can be to do this all for others. Phos says, "Sensei, will you praise me?" Later on in the chapter, super depressing line, because it shows that Phos is still seeking Congo's validation and just wanted to be praised by them. Everything Phos did was to be praised by Congo, and Phos still loved Congo during all of those things that Phos did. And it shows that just the darkness that we have in humanity, but how we try to do good. It shows such of the complexity of humanity, which I'm talking about, which I don't think I'm being very clear on, but that's what I'm trying to get out. With choosing both the ending that Phos dies and that Phos gets to be reborn and live with the pebbles, it shows two paths, like I said. It shows a path where you give into your human desires and you seek validation from others, and you do everything you can to try and be useful to other people, and you can do everything you try again to seek other people's validation, and even selfish things can be selfless, if that makes sense. Because, it's such a hard concept, which I'm going to make a separate video about. I say this every time. But basically, Phos did this for other people. Phos did this for other people's validations. Phos did this for other things. But in doing so, they destroyed themselves. They destroyed who they were, and they became a destructive force that only sought other people's validations instead of seeing other people. And the gems did this the same to Phos. They saw Phos's utility. They only supported Phos's utility instead of just seeing Phos, and Phos actually does that to the other characters too. And the pebbles show a different path. The pebbles show seeing Phos as themselves and as who they are, and Phos was able to see the pebbles as they are and who they are, and as people who just wanted to exist and cherish the people they have around them. Oh man, Pebble saying that they wanted to have Phos stay because they wanted to hear their story more just showed that the Pebbles genuinely want Phos to exist with them. This story is so sweet. It is very sad, very, very sad, very depressing with what Phos is going through, but now we're getting to see kindness and compassion from other characters other than Phos, and we see how this compassion can play into a better life, and hopefully a better life for Phos as we see them off for the very last time.